Rodrigo Prieto, Silence is the second collaboration between you and Martin Scorsese following The Wolf of Wall Street. Um, Going into this film, aesthetically, it's so different from the last one that you guys did. What was the visual approach to it?
Well, in fact, when we first started talking about it, Scorsese shared with me that he wasn't quite sure how to approach it visually. He felt that it needed a certain restraint, and he knows that his language as a director, as his cinematic language, it can be complex and quick camera moves and sort of extreme. Camera language, and but he felt that silence perhaps needed something different. So indeed, I think in the end we settled for maintaining that restraint he talked about. And I even applied that to the lighting and certainly the camera work. We wanted the audience to really feel right there, right in 17th century Japan. Well, first in Macau, then Japan, and we didn't want to distract that with fancy, camera work or moves. There are a few camera moves here and there, and some of them are quick, but it becomes very surprising and much more impact out of it. Just perhaps like the music in the movie, it's very, very sparse, and you could even think by viewing it that there's no music at all, because there are many moments, very dramatic moments, that are silent, and all you hear is the ambience and the the dialogue and the actual sound of the place, and which is I think very bold and really strong. And we wanted to approach the cinematography that way as well. We didn't want to embellish it, and I think that common misconception with cinematography is that it's supposed to be pretty and beautiful, like a decoration for a story, and it's not decoration. It's I think the main thing for me always in cinematography is support the emotional content of the movie, and I think for Silence that was really crucial to just be there photographing these priests in this situation and the villagers and what they're all going through, and just see it in the simplest way possible.
Well, all modesty aside, this is a very beautifully shot movie. uh, and there is a restraint to it and an economy to the images. So the collaboration between you and Scorsese, we know that he storyboards a lot. What is that collaboration like between the two of you?
Yes, he does extensive shot lists. Every scene he designs the ideas, the shots, and he then shares that with me and with the assistant director, and we just go scene by scene, and he talks about what he has imagined in pre-production, sometimes even before he's seen some locations. And then that becomes kind of the Bible. Sometimes it'll have diagrams or drawings, like storyboard type of thing. But it's not like a classical storyboard, the way, where it's every shot. He'll just draw key frames, and the rest of it will be descriptions or diagrams. And when he shares that work with us, we sit down in a room and we go through it, and then that's a moment to also have other ideas and present thoughts that I may have had of certain scenes, of how to shoot them and this and that. And well, certainly also when we're actually on the location, we have to sometimes adapt to the reality of the place. But for the most part, we stick to it. We do stick to his design, which I must say is always amazing. And he always, every shot has something to say. If he was on a close-up or on a medium shot, or a camera moves or it doesn't, there is an emotional reason behind it, something that really relates to what he's trying to say with his story. And I find that extraordinarily inspiring. And we're not just shooting coverage. Never. With Scorsese, it's not about, okay, this is a scene, so let's do a master shot and then close-ups, and that's the scene. We may shoot it that way, but there's always a reason that it is shot that way. And he's always also thinking about the way he's going to edit it. So it's, I don't know, it's a thrill for sure.
Right. We know that he's a great scholar of film history as well. So did he give you any kind of visual references, or say, Kurosawa or Rossellini, just some of the things that are coming to the top of my head that it reminded me of, and certainly Scorsese films as well. Did he give you any kind of visual inspirations that he wanted you to look at, or paintings, or?
Not a lot. Well, for the one part, in terms of the research, there was a lot of research. Marianne Bauer really dug deep, and Scorsese wanted the movie to be authentic in every sense, and he wanted that research to really dictate everything. Light sources, in my case, you know, if I can just invent, you know, okay, we'll have this type of lamp because it's beautiful and I love it. No, it had to be of that era, of that type of village, all these things. He did reference in particular one movie, Japanese movie, 50s, I'm not sure, I think it was in 1950, Ugetsu, it's called, for a specific scene, or several scenes that happen in the water in a small boats as they're traveling. The priests travel from Tomogi village to Goto village and back and forth at night because they're hiding, you see. So a lot of the movie happens in this darkness, or either darkness of night or dusk, or inside their huts with a candlelight, or fog. A big part of the whole thing is the priests need to not be seen, you know, by the Japanese authorities. So Ugetsu has a scene where these boats are traveling in a lake, and it's at night in the fog, and it's beautiful. It's quite theatrical, and the fog behaves in a very poetic way. It moves around the boats like fingers, but this is achieved because they shot it in a studio, in a sound stage, you know, controlled, no wind. That we didn't have that luxury. We were shooting in we shot those scenes in a water tank in Taiwan. In fact, the same water tank that Ang Lee used on Life of Pi. But of course we're outside, and it's the ocean. It's supposed to be the ocean, so the water had to move in a certain way as the ocean would. So that complicated our fog effects. But we were able to somehow get a little bit of the Ugetsu look with our fake fog on set. Then it was enhanced slightly by visual effects to get that sort of fingery thing. But the movie was actually very, very technically complex, and you may see it and it may seem, like I said, simple in the way we actually set up the shots, and the look of it is stripped down of decoration, but it was extremely challenging. And, you know, like I was describing, all these night scenes, lighting them was you know, challenge in certain situations, locations that we can access big film lights to create moonlight and this sort of thing, or just managing the weather, you know. So it did have big challenges, but in the end, I'm very happy with the movie.
As well, you said, you know, you bring up the fog and the night shots, and it reminds me of how many striking images are in this film. I mean, each kind of like static shot is like a painting, in a sense. Using light and using color, like the black of their robes against the skyline and against the beach and all this stuff. Talk a little, I don't even know how to ask this question other than, how do you construct images like that?
Well, you asked earlier about also references, and I forgot to mention that we did use art also as references. And again, looking for cinematography that would be subjective to what the priests are going through. I thought that what Jesuit priests from Portugal would have in their minds in terms of their worldview would be Baroque painting. So, you know, Velázquez was an inspiration, José de la Ribera, even Georges de la Tour, Goya, and so there were a few images, a few of their paintings that I referenced for some scenes, and eventually we kind of shifted into a more Japanese way of viewing the world, and so taking inspiration actually from the screens of the Edo period in Japan. You know, the big Japanese screens that mostly have, most of them have a lot of gold on them. So even the color timing of the movie shifted to that golden hue, even though we start in a cooler palette. The color hue went towards that sort of golden yellow. So yeah, art was an inspiration. But I mean, the sets were certainly wonderful. Dante Ferretti did amazing sets that allowed for really great composition. And even the villages, he placed the huts in certain positions that when I was there, looking through a viewfinder, I could quickly find a great compositions just by the way he set it up. He put the boats just in the exact spot, and he never even talked to me about it, or we never actually said, okay, this is where you should put the camera. But it just happened, and obviously the Japanese sense of aesthetic helped. Immediately things are very orderly. So the way they sit, the placement of the mats, everything is set out in a very specific way. And we had consultants with us all the time, so we made sure that we weren't breaching protocol of what it would actually be when when you go and meet a head samurai. That's exactly how they would sit, and all these things. So so we used it. We used that for the composition, and I guess it ends up being like you say, painterly, but it wasn't in that sense like a conscious search for that.
Right. How much did religious iconography play in the composition of the images? You use a painting. Well, I mean, the movie uses a painting of Jesus. That was Greco's painting of Jesus, I think it was.
It is Greco, yes.
So how much did you draw influence from that? Certainly Andrew Garfield is made to look a bit like Jesus with his hair and the beard and all that, but
yes, that's right. Well, that specific painting, we didn't know during production that was going to be the image. We knew that we were going to overlay the face of Christ from some painting that the character of Rodriguez references. But Scorsese took some time, looking at many different possibilities, and the book references, I don't remember which painting right now specifically, and that's what we were going to, but he felt in the end, Scorsese, that image, perhaps seen in a church or in its environment, is incredible, but it didn't quite work for him visually for the connection between Rodriguez and that face. So he found that painting, and even though chronologically it's not quite precise for that time, but he felt that the expression of Christ was very appropriate. So that's why we used that one. So we just had to shoot the plates and of like the floor, and and we knew that visual effects would put a painting on top of it, that sort of thing, and or that moment when he sees his reflection on the water and he puts his head into it, and so that was meant to be surreal, So it's actually not a very realistic visual effect, but that was certainly Scorsese's intention, that it felt surreal, basically, and in a moment of big doubt and from Rodriguez. And like I mentioned, I did find inspiration in Velázquez and Baroque painters of the time, especially for the beginning of the story. So I looked for opportunities to create that type of lighting in different environments. When they discover Kijijiro in the beginning in Macau, or even that first meeting in Macau as well, in that church, and that's it's a big room, and I that actually technically was a struggle, because there was only one window in that set behind the priest, in the desk. So to create that strong side light that you see so much in Baroque painting, I had to come up with this notion of the sunlight bouncing off of the wall, and that's what creates a side light, instead of a window directly creating it, which would have been, and also there were no light sources. But that prevailed even towards the end, and there are certain scenes that were not precisely inspired in a painting, but we wanted towards the end to have some feeling of hell, or what hell would be in these priests' minds, So some of the things they witness or things they live, and I won't spoil it, but I lit it with fire, and we created torchieres that were authentic to the era, with fire on them, and there's no moonlight in those scenes. It's all just firelight. And Scorsese talked about the brownish image, which was perfect when he said that. Okay, we'll light it with fire. It will just naturally have that color. And yes, fire and hell would very much be in their perception of what these horrors are, you know. So these are the sort of things that I guess were inspired in art. And so, you know, I don't know if the audience will feel that or not, but you know, you can go so many ways when you're creating lighting or camera work, you know, and it's exciting to just dive into a certain way. For example, not using moonlight for those scenes, or, you know, what's a light source. So I tried it that it would all look authentic and realistic, because overall in the movie, that was intention in every department, production design, and certainly in the cinematography, but expressive, you know, like an expressive naturalism. And that's the kind of tools we use. Okay, so I'll use light sources to create that certain effect of fire and the contrast, and you know, just to get into the feeling, the emotional state of the character, but still use light sources that would feel like, oh yeah, they just went out and shot, you know, this scene with those torches on. But of course, it took a lot of actual lighting to make it look authentic.
Right. You're also helped in the fact that the landscapes that you're shooting are so gorgeous. And that's one of the things that makes it so unique in Mr. Scorsese's canon. We think of him as this urban New York filmmaker. Can you talk a little bit about using the environments to create your images?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. He really wanted the movie to be very reliant on nature and what their experience of Japan would be. He also wanted even the greenery to be authentic to Japan, even if we shot it in Taiwan. So that was sometimes we would bring in certain plants that would be native to Japan or things like that. I mean, to that extent. But also, that's one of the reasons we shot it on motion picture film negative, is that really the color of the different shades of green in the trees and in the plants really is captured much better on film than any digital camera as of now. So that's one of the reasons we went on film. We really also wanted to use a film grain to help the feeling of the air, and sometimes more or less grain, depending on the texture we wanted, the feeling almost on the skin and on the, you know, the smell. So we use these elements, but certainly scouting the locations, we went very far. I mean, we went to locations that were very hard to access, and we had to climb on, you know, no vehicles could get there, and we had to just climb and carry the equipment to it, because it was crucial, their environment and the presence of God, you could call it, in in these surroundings, and yet the silence of God, and also the contrast of sometimes these tremendously horrible things they're seeing, but yet in this beautiful nature, you know. So we were always looking for these compositions, even in a scene that there's a torch. I won't describe what it is exactly for those who haven't seen it, but there were these cliffs behind the characters that are being tortured, and so very purposefully placed these crosses right in front of these cliffs, and you know, these things. So yeah, the contrast of the beauty of nature and the horror of what humanity can do is important to the film.
Absolutely. Lastly, I wanted to ask you about your Oscar nomination that you received for Brokeback Mountain. We're an awards website, so we're always interested to know what that kind of recognition meant for you in your career.
Sure. That was very exciting. It actually, the award ceremony coincided with my daughter's birthday. I believe she turned 13 that day when the ceremony was. So it was really beautiful to share that moment with my family, my two daughters and my wife, Monica. I enjoyed very much the parties and that party of the Oscar and the people, and it was certainly very exciting. So it was very enjoyable. And but of course, you know, I don't approach my work I actually consciously try to avoid the traps of thinking what type of cinematography I should do that perhaps will get the attention of you know, Academy voters and all that. That's an easy trap, and I know what you know, the kinds of things that people think are great cinematography, and what is gorgeous and beautiful. And it's not that I avoid doing that necessarily, but I try not to. I try to and especially in silence, practice restraint and do what I feel was appropriate for the moment. There are some scenes that have some exteriors that instead of shooting in backlight that I could have, we chose to shoot them with frontal, harsh sunlight or very hot, just uncomfortable sunlight, and those were conscious decisions. And you know, it would have been much prettier shot at a different time of day, but we went for the brutality of that sometimes. So it's just, it's light is emotional, and it causes emotion on us in our daily lives. So I try to utilize what I feel about the light I see around me and what it makes me feel, and I try to apply that to cinematography.
Well, this is a beautifully shot film and a great movie overall. Congratulations on it, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
My pleasure, and I hope people, you know, go see it and then feel it.
I hope so too. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Take good care.